Breaking news now from the Cherry Grove section of North Myrtle Beach, where we understand multiple condos have caught fire. News 13's Conan Gasquet continues to keep us up to date on that situation. He's at 49th and North Ocean Boulevard with the very latest. Firefighters, we're told, aren't sure how it started, and they had a tough time getting there. Let's check in now with Conan.
Yeah, to kind of get you up to speed, Nicole, it is actually 5 condos that have caught fire at this point. It started, we believe, around 7:30. That's when we initially heard about it and started heading this way. It was one condo initially, and over the course of time, because of the wind and the sparks that were being blown across the street over to other condos, these condos, a second one caught fire and a third one caught fire. We've now got 5 that are on fire, and fire personnel are trying to do their best to prevent a 6th one from catching fire as well. But again, we got here at about 7:30 or so. Emergency personnel just started getting water on the flames at about 9:30 or so. No word yet on what the delay was there, what the struggles they had were, anything like that. But again, we're talking about 5 condos that have gone up in flames. One is burned to the ground already. 2 are on their way there. We've got another that you can see over to the right here is a lot of flames there on the top and the back of that house. And then down beside that, we've got a firefighter over there with a hose on the side of this building to prevent it from spreading to a 6th condo. A very crazy situation out here. Again, we got here about 7:30 or so. One of the first responders that I talked to on the scene said that he thought that perhaps what caused this was a light pole that was leaning, and if we can take a look at this, you can actually see this light pole. If we can zoom in here a little bit, this is the light pole, and I saw this as soon as we got here, that this was pretty much leaning. I saw it was behind the flames at that point, but the first responder who was here, the volunteer firefighter, told me that he thinks it's possible. He does not know. He thinks it's possible that this getting blown over by the wind, perhaps it sparked, and that's maybe what started the fire. Again, that is not official information. We do not know anything so far, but perhaps that is what led to the starting of this fire. So again, it's been a very crazy situation here. We have the multiple different agencies have been out here throughout the time that we were here. We've got a lot of firefighters on the scene now. It did take a little while before they were able to get some water on the flames. I'm not 100% sure about what the delay was. I don't know if it was related to flooding in the area and them having difficulty getting here or anything like that. But as you can see, just a crazy situation with 5 condos ablaze right now in Cherry Grove. We're continuing to monitor this situation as we have since we first got out here, and we will keep updating you throughout the night as we get more information.
Conan, I have a question for you. For folks that may not be very familiar with that area, can you give me a landmark? Can you give me something to hold on to put it into place exactly where you are in Cherry Grove?
Well, the condos that are directly behind me right now are right on the beach. The ocean is right on the other side of these condos. So it's, North Ocean Boulevard and, 49th Avenue. I'm not sure that really means a whole lot to anyone if you're not familiar with this area, but these are condos that are right along the beach, and in fact, all along North Ocean Boulevard, there are condos, that go blocks and blocks. And so what they're trying to do right now is prevent this fire that has already spread from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 condos from spreading any further and getting to a 6th condo. So it's hard to really find a landmark because really mostly this section is just a bunch of condos. But of course we are right here on North Ocean Boulevard, so just on the other side of the condos that you're looking at right now. And as you see there, this house in the middle really starting to collapse. We've been expecting for a while that it was going to collapse. It's kind of come down piece by piece, but you saw another big chunk there falling. And again, it's hard to set a landmark because the ocean is right on the other side, and it's mostly just a lot of condos that are in this area. Got some information now, according to the National Guard. They said they did not send in crews right away to put it out because they knew no one was inside and wanted it to die down before sending in emergency workers. So that is the information that we have. Julia Morris talking to National Guard members. Okay, and this is what they have told us when we asked about some of the delays that were going on in here in terms of it getting, taking time for people to get here. Again, as best we know, no people have been harmed by this. And, initially it was only one condo, but because of the wind that has been blowing out toward the ocean, a lot of the embers and a lot of the sparks, they spread, and they initially ignited one other condo, and then that spread to a condo on its right. That it spread to a condo from that second condo's left, so that was kind of in the middle. It spread to either side, and then it kept spreading in the general south direction as we go back down North Ocean Boulevard. So again, 5 condos on fire here, ablaze. Firefighters working hard to put all this out, but a very crazy situation here in Cherry Grove.
Conan, you talked about the National Guard. You made reference to them. It appears that is who is standing behind you now. And so we realize, is that the case? Or we see they're not just sightseers. They're not just people coming out to look at what's going on. There's National Guard behind you is what it appears to be. Can you tell if those are National Guardsmen behind you? You can't.
Nicole, my IFB went out briefly there. Can you ask that question again? I could not hear the majority of that question.
You talked about the National Guard. We had heard they were there. It appears that is who is behind you now. Is that who is behind you now, overseeing the situation behind you? There's a whole slew of people behind.
Yes, there are National Guard members and I'm almost certain that these are National Guard members here. I think Julia was able to talk to them. These are, in fact, National Guard members. We've got a crew of about 5 people out here now covering this, and so we're gathering as much information as we can. Julia's here. We've got Curtis Graham, our photographer, Brian Quigley, one of our editors, Andrew Woolfolk, one of our producers, all here on the scene, so we can gather as much information as we can. Julia was able to talk to one of the National Guardsmen a little while ago. They are the ones that you can see who were just behind me that you were asking about. We've also got firefighters. I saw a highway patrolman come through just a little while ago. I'm not entirely sure what all agencies are represented, but it's quite a few different agencies that are out here helping to fight these flames. And as you can tell, it's going to take a while for them to get all this put out, and it's going to take lots of help from a lot of different people.
Well, especially given the fact that you have this wind factor that is making it even more difficult to have survived a hurricane and then to have to turn around and have a fire take your home. It's just very sad to see this happen. I want to thank you for that live update. We'll be checking back in with you later. Speaking of the wind conditions and how it is playing a role and making it difficult for firefighters to get the situation under control, we go now to Kara James.
Wind certainly is a factor, and we've had that wind. It's actually the lowest it's been in several hours now, but in North Myrtle Beach, which is the closest responding station, wind is sustained at 20 miles an hour, gusts up to 30 miles an hour. So that is certainly not going to help the situation at all. And because Hurricane Matthew is still relatively close to us, we're expecting those gusty winds to continue for several more hours, making it a difficult effort here to get those flames under control. And you can actually see how fast that smoke was moving away there. That is that wind at 20 miles an hour, gusting at times to 30 miles an hour. Again, it will be a little gusty here for the next few hours, but wind should start to calm down a little bit after midnight. We can look at more of those wind gusts and what they're expected to be coming up just in a few minutes. Back to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. Of course, we'll continue to keep you updated right here on News 13. We are going to go back now live to Cherry Grove for another update on that fire there and new information. Conan?
Yeah, the firefighters are, as I explained before, one of the things that they're trying to do, in addition to putting out the fires that already exist, they're trying to prevent it from spreading, because that's obviously what it has done throughout the entire time. It's the wind that has certainly contributed to that, all the wind that we've had throughout the day here and the wind that we've had since this fire started. That's what caused it to initially go across the street to the ocean side and catch fire with one of the condos over there, and it spread from there to 3 other condos. So as mentioned, 5 total. They're trying to prevent it from getting to a 6th. As you can see, the firefighters spraying every way they can, really, and the condos that are on the far left here, I don't see any fire personnel working on these. I think just based on what I'm seeing, I think, this kind of indicates that the main goal here is to prevent it from spreading any farther than it already has. So that's what they're trying to do now. And again, five have gone up so far. You can see the initial one way over here to my left. Really, essentially embers at this point. It has burned pretty much all the way to the ground. The majority of one across the street is still standing. They've gone about halfway down on one. There's another that you can't see that's sort of between two of the ones that you can see. This sort of smaller building, a little bit to the left of what we're showing right now, was one that completely burned as well. So we have two that have completely burned. We have one that's more than halfway gone. We have one that's fully involved, and we have one over here on the far right that is certainly in bad shape, although you can see the front of this one still in good shape. The majority of the fire on this one is on the back side. Firefighters certainly trying to contain this, doing the best they can in what's obviously a very difficult situation now. But as you mentioned, what a difficult day it's been here in Cherry Grove. They had serious flooding, some of the worst flooding that we saw as a result of Hurricane Matthew in our area happened right here in Cherry Grove. And Julia and I were actually out doing some interviews with people, and we were kind of trying to shoot some video of some of the flooding that happened here, which by that point was not as bad as it had been earlier in the day. And then a guy drove up and said, hey, there's a fire down on 49th Avenue. So we drove down. It was probably about a mile or so from where we were at the time. We could not see the flames initially, but we drove down and finally were able to see the flames and started shooting video. And the emergency personnel started arriving, and so the various condos have gone up in flames, and they are trying to contain that now. So a very difficult situation here in Cherry Grove, but the firefighters, National Guard, everyone else on the scene doing everything they can to help the situation.
Conan, a quick question for you. When the first one caught fire that's across the road, how quickly did it spread? Did it hop over the road and get to the other ones? Any idea?
It did take a pretty good while. If I had to estimate, I would say it was about 30 or 45 minutes. That's just a guess on my part. We were obviously out here. We were hoping to get a live shot at that point. I mentioned, we got here about 7:30. We were hoping to get a live shot around 8. You were hoping to do a cut-in for the football game that was going on CBS at the time. So we were busy working on that. We were kind of monitoring the fire, setting up a live shot, and, different things like that. I would guess it was about 30 to 45 minutes, but we could see all the sparks flying in that direction. And even, as the wind would change, mostly the wind has been blowing out toward the ocean, but the wind has blown south in a few occasions. And I'm stepping aside here to continue showing you some more of what's going on. But as the wind has changed directions, it was actually coming pretty close to where we had our live shot set up. So we were obviously being extremely careful in the early stages of this, because we could see sparks and embers flying all around. And, we certainly did kind of wonder, if these sparks would potentially ignite anything else. That's what ended up happening. And it's only gotten worse from there. So it's, spreading from 1 all the way to 5, and they're trying to prevent it from spreading to a 6th. I don't see them spraying what would be the 6th house anymore. It looks like the firefighters are mainly focusing on this house, which you can see on your left here. That is the 5th house that caught fire. It does not look like they're spraying the 6th house anymore. That's what they were doing initially, I assume, to kind of prevent the embers from igniting that one as well. So they're trying to contain it where it is, doing the best they can, and trying to help what's a very difficult situation here.
Boy, that last one is really seeming to go up faster just in the amount of time that we've been talking. Any idea about resources? Are they limited? Do they have what they need to contain it from hitting another one, number 6? Any idea about their resources?
I think it certainly appears that they do now. I guess what we can show you video-wise is I think I see 2 fire hoses right now. And again, they are spraying this house on the right side here, which would be the 6th if it were to ignite. Hopefully that's not the case. But 2 fire hoses, that is all I see at this point. I don't see any more beyond that. Obviously, you know, when you're dealing with a hurricane, resources may have been a problem from the very beginning. When we first got here, I did not initially see any emergency personnel when I first got here around 7:30. It was probably about 7:35 when I saw the first vehicle come through, and yeah, you can as Curtis Graham, our photographer, was just saying here, you can see the embers flying everywhere. But it was about 7:35 when I saw the first emergency vehicles, which I think at the time were National Guard, come through. But as we've mentioned, when we're dealing with a hurricane, you know, a lot of the resources could have been elsewhere, and so perhaps that contributed, you know, to the fact that initially they weren't able to get a whole lot of emergency personnel out here. I think it was probably about 8:30 or so by the time we really started to see quite a few other firefighters show up, and there's a lot of National Guard presence out here as well. So, you know, we've got a lot of different agencies who are getting involved, doing everything they can. But I think it's safe to say that the fact that a hurricane was going on, you know, probably did have an effect on this from a standpoint of the resources that they were able to put into this initially.
Yeah, and you know, what's the irony that now you need a lot of water to take care of a problem, and we've been inundated with massive amounts of water all day long from Hurricane Matthew. Conan, thank you for that live update and that report. We'll continue to bring updates as needed. Otherwise, we want to let our viewers know that we'll be back at 11 o'clock for News 13 at 11 with extended coverage on this massive fire in the Cherry Grove section of Horry County along the Grand Strand, and of course all the other impacts that Hurricane Matthew has had on our area throughout the day. Otherwise, we go back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we'll see you again tonight at 11.